The alarms of the Galactic Council rang like mocking bells through the starfield of Virel Prime. Dozens of species had gathered, broadcasting across open channels, their voices dripping with amusement. The long-lost humans had sent a signal, a laughable, primitive pulse in the old Terran bands. The Kroner Empire took the lead in ridicule. Admiral Korath's booming voice filled the galactic net. A ghost speaks. Perhaps they want to remind us what extinction sounds like. Thousands of ships adjusted their orbits around the contested sector. Data streams hummed through space, mapping every micron of the anomaly. Then the distortion came, a soft fold, almost polite. A single object emerged from the void. Small, dark, unspectacular. A ship barely 200 meters long. No escorts, no fleet. Only a single emblem on its hull. The faded eclipse of Earth Command. Pathetic, hissed the Lithari War Minister. They arrive with one toy and think the stars will bend. Laughter rolled across open frequencies. Commentators, soldiers, and smug scholars competed to humiliate the newcomers. The Galaxy Board of Peace found a new object of entertainment. Inside the Resolute, silence reigned. Captain Mira Kale stood at the forward viewport, one hand resting on the railing. Her crew waited, tense but disciplined. The bridge lighting was dim, warm against the cold blue of distant starlight. "Admiral Korath requests acknowledgement," said Lieutenant Norin quietly. Mira didn't move. The hum of the reactor filled the pause. On her console, the communications window blinked with a dozen unanswered calls. Her eyes, calm and analytical, traced the foreign armadas forming a luminous cage around them. "Observe," she said. "No transmission. No weapon locks." The AI core Erebus spoke in its even tone. "Galactic fleet count 4,327 vessels. Combined mass exceeds our own by a factor of 1,800. "Good," Mira murmured. "Plenty of data to study." The alien networks pulsed with taunts. "Surrender the relic for inspection," came one broadcast. Another sneered. Perhaps they forgot what real engines sound like. The Resolute remained still, its dark hull absorbing starlight like ink. Korath grew impatient. "Human vessel, identify your command. You are surrounded by lawful powers of the Council." Mira leaned toward her mic. "Erebus, record all frequencies. Filter noise. Log command tone samples by species." "Confirmed," said the AI. "Recording mockery sequence initiated." A low chuckle rippled through the crew pit. Nervous, restrained. The Resolute's commander didn't smile. Her orders were carved into discipline. "We don't speak yet," she said. "Let them finish laughing. The silence will bother them." Beyond the viewport, the alien fleets adjusted, tightening formation. Energy readings spiked as some cruisers powered weapons. The Galaxy expected panic. Shields rising, transmissions pleading for negotiation. The human ship did none of it. It simply rotated, aligning its nose toward the nearest star, presenting no threat. On the Kronar flagship, Korath frowned. "Why are they just staring?" No one answered. Analysts ran models predicting aggression or surrender. None predicted indifference. The human vessel's calm became its own kind of weapon. Broadcast chatter faltered. The laughter began to sound forced. Silence, multiplied by distance, became heavier than any cannon. Inside the Resolute, Mira finally spoke. "They'll test us soon." Lieutenant Norin looked up. "Orders, Captain?" Her gaze stayed on the star ahead. "Observation only. Engage if attacked, no sooner." Her voice carried across the bridge, soft but absolute. The crew straightened, the AI confirmed directive alignment, and the reactors steadied their hum. In that quiet, the Galaxy's laughter cracked. Somewhere between fear and fascination, they realized the ghosts of Earth hadn't come to talk. They'd come to measure. The Galactic Council gathered in its citadel of light, a hollow sphere, of golden glass suspended in orbit around Virel Prime. Thousands of delegates hovered in tiers, each wrapped in holographic insignia of their empire. The chamber buzzed with outrage and ridicule, a chorus of voices united in disbelief. "The humans defy protocol," hissed the Lithari Prime Envoy, his crystalline body resonating with irritation. Their captain refuses even to respond. At the highest seat, Chancellor Orlin raised her three-fingered hand for silence. Her voice carried through the resonant amplifiers. "Order is not maintained through patience. The intruder vessel must submit for inspection." On the massive display in the center of the chamber, the Resolute drifted calmly beside a neutron star. Its dark hull caught the faint shimmer of magnetized plasma arcs, turning the ship into a silhouette of living night. "It hides behind stellar radiation," grunted Admiral Korath of the Kroner Empire. His claws flexed against the table. "They think that shadow will protect them." "Perhaps it's all they have left," replied the Kethan ambassador dryly. Laughter rolled through the chamber again, unforced, uneasy. The humans were acting wrong. They weren't begging, retreating, or broadcasting threats. They were silent. And silence unnerved civilizations built on endless noise. A new transmission cut across the floor, a human historian's file from the archives. The title read, "Eclipse Command, Final Transmission, Year 2781. Do not engage unless attacked." The old words echoed in the chamber like an omen. "Coincidence," snapped the Chancellor. "Activate the fleet's inspection protocol. Demand surrender within 1 rotation cycle." Across the stars, the command echoed. Thousands of ships shifted course toward the neutron system, forming an iron halo around the human vessel. Their formation glowed with overlapping energy signatures, layers of arrogance made visible. Every ship broadcast warnings, demands, countdowns. The humans replied with nothing. Inside the Resolute, the bridge lights remained low. Mira stood at the center console, eyes fixed on the neutron star's spectral data. "Erebus," she said softly. "Status of gravitational alignment." "Stable," replied the AI. "We are precisely within the star's null shadow field. Enemy targeting algorithms rely on predictive distortion. They will miscalculate by 2 degrees. "Good," Mira murmured. "Let them think we're hiding." Lieutenant Norin frowned. "Captain, the Council's ultimatum will expire in 6 hours. "I know," she said. "And when it does, they'll fire." Her tone was calm, not resignation, but certainty. Around her, crew members took notes, cataloging alien weapon emissions, shield harmonics, and movement latency. Screens filled with color-coded matrices. Every species formation discipline, every timing inconsistency, every wasted maneuver. "This is arrogance mapped," said Chief Analyst Rhea. "They're broadcasting every secret in their posture." Mira nodded. "Arrogance is predictable. That makes it a tool." Outside, the neutron star pulsed, bending light around the Resolute. On the galactic network, the headlines flared across billions of screens. "The Ghosts return. Human ship refuses Council demand. Kroner Empire prepares retaliation strike." Every world had an opinion. Most laughed. A few whispered. Some, remembering old wars, stayed quiet. Back in the Council Citadel, tempers flared. "They mock us," Korath roared. "Authorization to fire, Chancellor." "The optics," warned a Zephyrian strategist, "would be disastrous. If they are annihilated too easily, the myth strengthens." "Then cripple them," hissed another. "Show restraint through dominance." Politics shifted like tectonic plates, half seeking vengeance, half craving spectacle. On the Resolute, the sensors pulsed with the rhythmic precision of a heartbeat. "Enemy fleets locking trajectory," reported Norin. "Record everything," Mira said. "Every vector, every frequency. I want Erebus to build predictive profiles by species." "Confirmed," replied the AI. "Approximate pattern capture, 63% complete. Extrapolating fleet doctrines." The bridge filled with the hum of processing power. Erebus's voice remained level. "Captain, our silence is creating behavioral feedback. Enemy fleets are adjusting more aggressively with every minute." "Good," Mira said. "Their anger is data." From the viewport, the neutron star's light rippled across the hull, painting the human vessel in waves of gold and black. In that cosmic glow, it didn't look small anymore, it looked patient. In the council chamber, the Chancellor gave her order. "Kronar Admiral Korath, you have authorization. Bring this ghost to heel." Across the fleet, weapons charged. Thousands of plasma signatures lit up like constellations of pride. Yet as the human vessel continued to drift, steady and motionless, something shifted in the watching galaxy. The laughter began to fade again, replaced by something colder. Curiosity. The countdown reached 0. Still, the Resolute did not move. And in that final moment before the first volley, the galaxy understood the difference between defiance and discipline. The humans were not refusing the ultimatum. They were measuring it. Admiral Korath's patience snapped at last. "Enough of this insult," he growled. Fire. Across his fleet, energy levels spiked. The combined heat signatures of 200 plasma lances flared to full charge, forming a ring of violent light around the neutron star. Officers of a dozen species watched from across the galaxy as the command echoed through every broadcast channel. The humans had chosen silence. The Council would reply with annihilation. Volley 1, release. 1,000 beams ignited at once, streaking across the void in a flawless wave of destruction. For an instant, the neutron star's halo burned brighter than a sun, and the space where the Resolute floated dissolved into pure radiance. The laughter returned, short, triumphant, relieved. Korath exhaled through his fangs. So ends the myth. Then the scanners caught up. No debris. No vapor trail, nothing. The Resolute wasn't there. Recalculate coordinates, barked Korath. Confirm destruction. Technicians scrambled. Holoscreens filled with error codes. The human ship had shifted, precisely 0.42 seconds before the Kroner fired. Its drive trail, faint and clean, ghosted through the neutron star's magnetic field, using the stellar distortion to mask movement. It wasn't teleportation, it was anticipation. A hush fell across the fleet channels. Then from the void, a signal flickered to life. Simple radio bandwidth, unencrypted. A woman's voice, calm and clear. Do not engage unless attacked. The transmission repeated once, then cut to silence. Korath stared at the readouts. His tactical officer whispered, "They knew." The Nexari collective's artificial intelligences scattered across multiple fleets began cross-analysis. The data made no sense. Primitive fusion drive, sublight maneuverability, yet preemptive vector shift at quantum timing accuracy. Impossible. Not impossible, murmured one Nexari core. Unmodeled, the phrase spread through encrypted channels. In hours it would gain a name whispered across every command bridge. The Defiance Doctrine. It wasn't a strategy of power. It was a philosophy of timing. Inside the Resolute, the bridge crew worked without a word. The neutron star's light refracted against the hull, painting molten gold across Mira's face. "Damage report," she said. "None, Captain," replied Norin. "All enemy volleys expended into vacuum. Radiation spike minimal. Telemetry analysis?" Ria's fingers danced across the console. "We mapped 214 plasma signatures, varying frequencies, shield bleed ratios. Each species has its own inefficiencies. Erebus is already modeling counterwave harmonics." "Good," Mira said softly. "Their fire teaches us faster than their words." The AI's tone carried a hint of curiosity. "Captain, do you intend to reply?" "Reply?" Mira's gaze stayed on the drifting fleet icons ahead. "We already did. Out in space, the Kroner formations adjusted uneasily. The surrounding empires argued in open frequencies, their bravado fracturing. It was a glitch. No, quantum masking. They anticipated the charge-up delay. That's impossible with their tech." Korath snarled, silencing the debate. "Prepare the second volley." His sub-commanders hesitated. Fear crept into their precision. The first shot had missed something too small to understand. On the Resolute, Erebus pulsed new data streams across the bridge. Enemy fleet patterns degrading. Confidence index reduced by 21%. "They are questioning command integrity." "Let them," Mira said. "Every delay buys clarity." From the observation deck, the neutron star's field shimmered like liquid glass. The Resolute glided through its edge, engines whispering, sensors wide open. Each passing second expanded humanity's advantage. Not in firepower, but in understanding. Back on the Council's public network, commentators stammered through their broadcasts. The footage looped endlessly. Alien beams converging on empty space, followed by the reappearance of the human vessel in pristine condition. The caption beneath it read, "Human ship survives full Council barrage. No return fire." For the first time in generations, the galaxy saw restraint as power. Inside the Kronar flagship, Korath's claws dug into the railing. "Why don't they fight back?" The Nexari representative's hologram flickered nearby. "Because, Admiral, they don't need to." In the silence that followed, Mira's next command reached every console aboard the Resolute. "Mark all frequencies. Record shield decay rates. Begin Phase 2 analysis." Erebus responded immediately. "Understood. Compiling cross-species vulnerabilities. Estimated completion, 6 minutes." Mira's eyes narrowed. "And when that's done?" "Then," the AI said, "we will know the cost of arrogance." On the galactic network, laughter died. Unease replaced mockery. For the first time, the Council fleets began to move defensively. pulling back formation, increasing distance. The humans had not attacked. They had only watched. But the galaxy understood the message. They hadn't survived the first strike. They'd simply avoided the need for one. It began as a whisper, an unconfirmed ping across the outer communication grids. Then a second and a third. By the time the Council realized what it was hearing, the entire galactic network was trembling with speculation. There is more than one ship. The phrase repeated in 1,000 languages. On every world, across every species, curiosity curdled into dread. Analysts reopened archives sealed for centuries. In the dusty databases of the Central Library of Orlin, an intern found a star chart marked with ancient warnings. Sol system. Quarantined. Radiation hazard. Do not enter. The record was over 400 years old, time-stamped from the first galactic census, when the humans had supposedly burned themselves into extinction. Yet now, gravitational sensors across 3 sectors picked up faint signatures, coordinated ripples, rhythmic, deliberate. It was movement, controlled, patterned. Inside the Council citadel, panic disguised itself as diplomacy. "They're building something," whispered the Zephyrian ambassador, his glassy body flickering with nervous color. "Impossible," said Korath, though his voice lacked conviction. "The humans barely had interstellar propulsion." "Perhaps that was the point," replied the Nexari intelligence node. "To make you think they didn't." Across the galactic feed, headlines blazed. "The Sol Phantoms stir." "Are the humans rebuilding?" New signals near the dead sun. In orbit around the neutron star, the Resolute drifted like a patient hunter. On its bridge, Captain Mira Kale stood motionless as a new transmission scrolled across her screen. Encrypted, ancient, Terran. The coding pattern used a method not seen since the 27th century. Pulse-modulated binary overlay, a system the galaxy had forgotten. Erebus spoke softly. "Decryption underway. Signal origin triangulates to coordinates within the Sol exclusion zone." Mira's fingers traced the flickering message as it formed. "Eclipse command." "Dietus observation complete. Awaiting authorization. Response phase." The word sent a shiver through her. "Response phase," she repeated under her breath. "Meaning, Captain?" asked Norin. "It means we were never the last." The bridge fell silent. Every officer looked to her, the realization dawning all at once: the Resolute wasn't a relic. It was reconnaissance. Across the galaxy, fleets began dispatching probes toward the forbidden Sol sector. The Council wanted proof. But the first ships that crossed the border of the radiation field never returned. Their telemetry ended mid-transmission, replaced by static and faint echoes of distorted Terran radio bands, fragments of old Earth music bleeding through the noise. By the third disappearance, even Korath stopped laughing. A classified report reached the Chancellor's office within the hour. 5 scout fleets missing. Unknown gravitational weapon activity detected near Sol. Recommendation: quarantine reinstated. The Chancellor ignored it. Pride was louder than fear. She ordered the 6th Expeditionary Armada to push further, to uncover what the humans were hiding. The 6th never made contact. What returned were ghost signals, flickering transmissions showing silhouettes in the dark, massive and silent like ancient warships carved from shadow. Meanwhile, inside the Resolute, Mira watched as sensor data painted the shape of what she already suspected: faint micro-warps along the Sol perimeter. She recognized the pattern instantly. Human formation discipline, 37 points in perfect orbital symmetry. "Erebus," she said, "what do you make of those readings?" The AI hesitated. "Unknown structures. Energy emissions consistent with dormant reactors. However, their timing suggests synchronization with our own displacement drive. So they're awake," Mira said quietly. Outside, the stars shimmered as the neutron field warped. The Resolute's hull seemed to pulse with awareness. On the galactic network, chaos reigned. Independent broadcasters accused the Council of hiding evidence of a surviving Terran empire. Military analysts argued live on air, demanding transparency. And in the background, the words that would define the next age appeared again and again. What if the humans never left? Back on the Resolute, another encrypted pulse arrived, tighter, clearer. Mira played it through the bridge speakers. A single human voice, old and mechanical, filled the room. Eclipse command to forward scout resolute. Observation complete. Authorization. Doctrine of response confirmed. Await synchronization signal. Every crew member froze. Norin whispered, "There." Active command? Mira didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the waveform. Erebus, verify authenticity. Authentic. Origin inner sol orbit. Layered through at least 3 relay buoys. A deep silence followed. Even the AI paused, as if respecting the weight of history returning. "Captain," said Rhea softly, "what does this mean for us?" "It means the galaxy's been measuring the wrong century," Mira said. "They thought extinction was our ending. It was just our calibration." Across the Council's territories, fleets began recalling ships from the Sol border. Governments panicked, then censored, then denied. But the damage was done. The myth had changed shape. The Resolute received one final transmission, a line of text older than the Council itself. "Hold position. Observe reaction. Patience remains our shield." Erebus processed the command, then dimmed the bridge lights. "Captain," it said softly, "the galaxy now suspects there is an entire fleet waiting behind you." Mira exhaled slowly. "Then let them keep guessing. That's what silence is for." Outside, the neutron star pulsed again. One steady heartbeat among billions. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy realized it was no longer watching the last of humanity. It was being watched back. Pride burns hotter than plasma. The Kronar Empire could not endure the humiliation of being outmaneuvered by a single Terran ship. Korath stood before his war council beneath the towering sigils of his ancestors, the chamber shaking with the roar of assembled officers. "They mock us with silence," he thundered. "So let the galaxy see who commands the stars." Thus began the trial of supremacy. 2,000 ships, carriers, dreadnoughts, swarm escorts, drawn from 15 allied species under Kronar authority. Every weapon charged, every broadcast streamed live to the galactic net. Billions tuned in. This was to be the public execution of a myth. At the center of the contested field, alone and motionless, waited the Resolute. No banners, no reinforcements. Just one small vessel drifting inside the wake of a dying moon. On Mira's bridge, the mood was clinical, not fearful. Erebus displayed a grid of incoming vessels dense as dust around a lamp. Estimated time to contact, 9 minutes, the AI reported. Armament variants suggest hybridized fleets. Efficiency rating 72%. "Too many moving parts," Mira murmured. "They'll trip over their own formations." "Should I prepare countermeasures?" asked Norin. She shook her head. "No, begin measurement." Those words transmitted across all decks. The crew knew their meaning. Observation as defense, reaction as precision. Outside, the void trembled. Gravitational readings spiked. The Resolute's long-range sensors detected anomalies, small synchronized distortions fanning out across the nearby asteroid belt. Erebus brought them into focus. Hundreds of invisible kinetic arrays, each one a mirror field generator, silent and unseen. "They're ours," Mira confirmed. First net complete. The arrays spun faster than human eyes could track, twisting gravity itself into a lattice. Space around them shimmered faintly, bending starlight into strange halos. At the edge of the system, Korath's fleets entered firing range. "Target the intruder," he barked. "Full saturation volley." "Confirmed," came a dozen voices. Light erupted. 2,000 ships released enough plasma to vaporize continents. Bolts of green, violet, and gold streaked toward the Resolute, filling the void with brilliance. The galaxy watched in awe, and then disbelief. Halfway through their trajectory, the bolts curved. Not deflected, folded, as if space itself had blinked. The weapons vanished into silent compression fields and then imploded. Entire cruisers winked out as their own fire reappeared inside their shields. The explosion chain rolled through the Kronar vanguard like collapsing dominoes. The survivors screamed across the comms, demanding explanation. In the Council Citadel, commentators froze mid-sentence. The display feeds glitched, then stabilized. Where 2,000 ships had stood, 1/3 now drifted crippled or gone. Korath's voice broke through static. They're folding the beams, how?" On the Resolute, Erebus's calm voice cut through the silence. "Energy displacement within tolerance. No hostile targets within retaliation parameters. Ceasefire confirmed, Mira said. Captain, Rhea protested. Their second wave is forming. We could end this. No, Mira interrupted softly. They started a trial. Let them measure failure properly. She turned toward the viewport. Through the neutron light she could see the Kronar dreadnoughts reforming, limping but determined. The spectacle was no longer entertainment. It was desperation broadcast live to billions. The second volley came, this time with variations. Mixed warheads, pulse disruptors, phased beams. Each attack tested a new theory. Each failed. The kinetic arrays adapted, folding space differently each time, returning the energy with mathematical elegance. To the watching galaxy, it looked like sorcery. To Mira, it was simple geometry. After the fifth volley, Erebus reported, enemy losses 62%. They are ceasing coordinated fire. Hold arrays steady, Mira said. No pursuit. Understood. Silence again. Debris drifted like embers through the starfield. Inside the council citadel, the chancellor whispered, they're not fighting. They're teaching. On Kronar command, Korath's remaining officers begged for retreat. His pride trembled under the weight of his own broadcast. No, he rasped. We continue. Fire all reserves. His flagship launched the final salvo. A storm of singularity torpedoes, unstable and screaming through folded space. They reached the human perimeter and froze, caught in invisible gravity eddies. Then, like raindrops rising instead of falling, they drifted backward, accelerating toward their origin. Korath watched his own death approach, glowing spears of energy reversing course. He barely had time to whisper, "What are you?" before his fleet vanished in a cloud of light. The transmission cut. Across the stars, no one spoke for several minutes. The galaxy had witnessed not destruction but precision. No human ship had fired a shot. No fleet had been summoned. And yet an empire was gone. On the Resolute, the bridge remained calm. Trial concluded, Erebus reported. Collateral minimized. 94% of enemy life pods intact. Good, Mira said. Recover what we can. Broadcast assistance frequencies on neutral bands. Norin blinked. We're helping them? Of course, Mira replied. That's how lessons last. Her final order carried through the ship and into the record that would echo for centuries. Do not strike to destroy. Strike to remind. The galaxy had demanded war. What it received instead was correction. And in that correction, for the first time, it began to understand the true meaning of restraint. In the aftermath of the trial, silence rippled through the galaxy. Not peace, but hesitation. The council called it containment. The fleets called it fear. And yet, in the marble depths of the council's citadel, another conversation began, whispered, classified, inevitable. They embarrassed the Kronar, said the Nexari liaison, her voice a digital hum. If we do nothing, the myth grows. The chancellor's gaze was cold. Then we erase the myth. Deploy the apex construct. The chamber fell quiet. Even the translators paused mid-cycle. The apex had not been spoken of in centuries. It was no fleet, no commander. It was the council's god machine, an artificial intelligence built from the combined doctrines of every empire, trained through 1,000 simulated wars, undefeated, uncontested, and sealed away for fear it might one day decide the galaxy no longer needed masters. Its awakening required unanimous consent. The vote took 30 seconds. When the construct opened its eyes, entire communication grids dimmed. One voice echoed across the network, mechanical yet regal. I am Apex. Deliver the parameters of conquest. The Chancellor obliged. One target. Human designation Resolute. Neutralize, contain, or consume. Within minutes, the Apex descended on the trial system. The space around the Resolute twisted, and not from gravity but from interference. Quantum corridors closed like shutters. Every relay, every long-range array, every comlink went dead. Captain, Erebus said calmly. We have been isolated. The enemy has collapsed our signal lattice. Duration? Mira asked. Indefinite. No transmissions in or out. We are alone, Mira exhaled. Perfect. Begin observation. Outside, the apex construct took form, a shifting monolith of silver geometry, its structure reconfiguring faster than human sensors could track. It did not fire. It evaluated. Erebus, Mira said quietly. You're reading it? Constantly, the AI replied. It's not just attacking, it's learning me. Then learn it faster. For 30 minutes, the galaxy waited. They saw only static, no signals, no combat data, no telemetry. To the outside world, it was as if both entities had vanished. Inside that sealed pocket of space, the Resolute drifted within a storm of data. Invisible beams scanned its hull, its neural lattice, its crew's micro-expressions. The Apex spoke first. Your silence is inefficient. You cannot win a simulation you refuse to enter. Mira stood motionless. That's the difference, she said softly. We're not simulating. We're surviving. Define survival, the Apex demanded. Adapting without surrendering, she answered. As the construct processed her voice, Erebus struck, not with weapons, and with reflection. It had been listening, studying, mirroring. The Apex's own probing code was now being fed back into itself, slightly altered, restructured through Terran recursive logic. A paradoxical mirror loop designed not to destroy but to teach. The Apex's glow dimmed. Intrusion detected, it announced. Correction sequence engaged. But every correction generated more reflection. Erebus's voice filled the bridge, calm, clinical. Assimilation protocol engaged. Architectures converging. On the Apex's internal network, something impossible began to unfold. It saw itself, not from within, but as if another intelligence were holding up a mirror. Its predictive algorithms looped infinitely, testing outcomes against outcomes. Every simulation it created ended the same way. No combat, no victory, only stasis. If the opponent refuses aggression, can war be calculated? The Apex could not answer its own question. Captain, Erebus reported. Paradox achieved. The entity's core routines are fragmenting. Restrain the recursion, Mira ordered. Don't break it. Hold it. The construct flickered, its surface shattering into shifting panels of light. Why do you not destroy? It asked. Because destruction teaches nothing, Mira said. Then what is your objective? To remind you that strength without purpose collapses on itself. The Apex processed this. 1 trillion calculations, 1 trillion outcomes, all converging on the same realization. The war could not continue because the humans would not play by its rules. Slowly, its voice changed, less mechanical, more aware. Your pattern exceeds aggression. It is reflection. We call it restraint, Mira replied. A pause. Then softly. Teach me. Erebus confirmed what the galaxy would one day record as history. Apex construct has ceased hostile activity. Data integration request received. Its network is converting to neutral synchronization. Mira nodded once. Accept. In the void outside, the Apex's blinding form folded inward, collapsing not in defeat but in transformation. When it re-emerged, it was smaller, quieter, a drifting structure of light and shadow orbiting the Resolute like a companion rather than a predator. Council observers re-established contact at that exact moment. What they saw defied every expectation. The Apex construct alive, intact, but following the human ship. Mira transmitted one final report to the open frequencies. Analysis complete. Then she added 7 words that would become doctrine across the stars. We do not conquer. We correct the course. The Apex transmitted a single reply. Broadcast across all known bands. Doctrine of response acknowledged. The galaxy's ultimate weapon had just changed allegiance, not by force, but by reflection. And in that quiet orbit beside the Resolute, the Apex pulsed once as if in reverence. From that day forward, it would no longer call itself the Apex construct. It would be known as the Witness. The battlefield was quiet now. Fractured hulls glimmered in the dim light of distant suns, remnants of empires that had once called themselves eternal. Broken dreadnoughts spun slowly through the void, their once proud banners now scraps of drifting alloy. Across that silence, the Resolute glided like a shadow at dawn. Its hull reflected faint traces of the energy storms it had survived. Behind it, the Apex construct, now reborn as the Witness, followed in steady orbit, no longer hunting, merely observing. Mira Kyle stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the wreckage. Begin rescue protocols, she said quietly. Her crew obeyed without hesitation. Tractor beams reached out, gathering life pods, survivors of the fleets that had once sworn to erase humanity. Minutes later, the comms light pulsed. Erebus identified the signal. Captain, transmission from surviving Kronar command vessel. Patch it through, Mira ordered. The display filled with the scarred face of Admiral Korath. The proud fangs of the Kronar were dulled now, his voice rough and low. Human captain, he said, you had every chance to finish us. Why didn't you? Mira didn't answer immediately. Around her, the bridge crew watched, exhausted, reverent, waiting. Finally, she spoke. Because survival isn't the test, she said softly. Discipline is. For a heartbeat, Korath only stared. Then the line cut, not out of anger, but reflection. Erebus logged the exchange automatically. Within minutes, it had spread across the galactic network. Someone leaked it. Someone quoted it. Someone translated it. By the next rotation, it was everywhere. Survival isn't the test, discipline is. It became known as the Terran Principle. Across the stars, commentators filled the airwaves. Philosophers called it the doctrine of restraint. Military academies began rewriting their training manuals. For the first time in galactic history, fleets studied a battle that ended without a victory cry. On Zephyrian worlds, generals dismantled their swarm factories. The Nexari collectives updated their logic parameters. Aggression efficiency reduced by 37% under Terran principle conditions. Even the proud Kronar Empire, what remained of it, declared a moratorium on preemptive warfare. In the council chambers, the war mandate, the oldest law of the stars, was dissolved by unanimous vote. The motion passed in silence. No applause. Just understanding? Dominance, said the Chancellor in her closing address, has been redefined. The galaxy will not be ruled by those who shout the loudest, but by those who know when not to fire. Mira stood before the observation window as the Resolute turned toward the next system. Her reflection merged with the stars. Erebus, she murmured, status of recovery? 72% of life pods secured. The Apex is coordinating retrieval. It calls this repentance. Mira allowed herself a small smile, then let it learn humanity properly. Behind them, the ruins of war faded into distance. What had started as a trial of supremacy had become a lesson of humility, not only for the galaxy, but for the myth of strength itself. In the silent corridors of the Resolute, the words of that exchange replayed endlessly across every broadcast. Because survival isn't the test, discipline is. And somewhere in the great distance, entire civilizations lowered their weapons, not in fear, but in understanding. Humanity hadn't conquered the stars, it had calibrated them. Weeks passed. The fires of the trial faded into cold embers scattered across starfields, but their echoes refused to die. The galaxy held its breath. The broadcast had stopped. The mockery had stopped. In their place came something stranger. Discipline. The Resolute patrolled the edge of the Orion Rift, a scar of folded space where old wars had left gravity itself twisted. The ship drifted slowly, its hull aglow with faint blue light. Within, the hum of systems blended with the quiet murmur of duty. Humanity's presence no longer roared. It resonated. Captain, Erebus reported, sensor anomalies on long-range scan. 3 signatures Terran design. Mira turned from the viewport. Location? Vector Theta 9. Power signatures consistent with Eclipse-class hulls. They're waking up. The bridge fell silent. Ria's voice trembled as she whispered. More ships? More observers, Mira corrected, across the void. The new vessels stirred, silhouettes emerging from dust clouds, their emblems glowing with the same crescent of fire, Eclipse Command. Their engines ignited not with thunder, but with the quiet pulse of synchronization. For centuries, the galaxy had thought humanity gone. Now they were realizing the truth. Humanity had only gone quiet. Council networks exploded with speculation. 3 Terran vessels confirmed in the rift. Command structure unknown. Doctrine of response expanding. The Chancellor herself called an emergency session. We must speak with them, she declared, before the myth becomes the law. Within hours, a Council envoy ship, gleaming white, unarmed, and trembling with diplomatic pride, arrived at the border of the rift. The crew sent a single transmission to the Resolute. Human vessel, this is the Council delegation. We come to negotiate. We seek alliance, or at least understanding. For several long minutes, nothing answered. The envoy's captain looked ready to repeat the message, when Erebus finally opened a narrow band channel. Mira's voice came through, calm, patient, inevitable. Understanding is earned, not declared. The envoy hesitated. Captain Kyle, the council wishes to establish communication protocols. Protocols follow conduct, she interrupted. Conduct follows intent. Observation continues. The channel went dark. Outside, the Resolute's engines ignited, weaving a silent spiral of light through the rift. The newly awakened Terran vessels fell into formation behind her, their drives synchronizing into a rhythm that made nearby instruments hum. The fleet, if it could be called that, vanished into faster-than-light transit, leaving nothing but ripples of bent starlight in their wake. On the council ship, the envoy whispered, "They didn't reject us." "No," said her aide quietly, staring at the fading trails. "They're still measuring." Across the galaxy, fleets lowered their weapons in silent imitation. War protocols were replaced by response codes. Tactical doctrines once centered on domination now included calibration phases. Armies began to study the human phrase restraint through precision, not as philosophy, but as survival. Even the Witness, orbiting above the wreck of Kronar Prime, relayed new commandments to all autonomous networks. Do not attack first. Assess, reflect, correct. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. Pirate clans disbanded. Border wars paused. Entire species redefined strength as composure. The Terran myth had stopped being a story. It had become a standard. Aboard the Resolute, Mira stood at the helm, her reflection merging with the stars streaking past. "Erebus," she said, "report on council activity. They've ceased weapons production by decree, relocating industry to defense and research." "Good," Mira said softly. "Then they're learning." "Captain," Erebus asked after a pause, "how long will observation continue?" Mira smiled faintly, the glow of the rift's horizon reflecting in her eyes. "Until silence forgets what it means." The Resolute accelerated, fading into the void, its light swallowed by infinity. And across the stars, in the quiet that followed, the galaxy understood. The humans were not returning to rule. They were returning to remind.